You're watching this video because you don't know jack diddly squat about making missions for Arma 3, and more specifically for A3G. I'm OPEC. If you have any questions about this video or the mission making process, feel free to chat with me on Steam or TeamSpeak. A3G currently has several highly competent mission makers. This includes, but is not limited to, Cephi, Poly, Comfy Blanket, Drezzo, Meh, Orange RPG, Corvalian, Sven, Pansyfaust, and Trusty Arabian. They too can help you make good missions, if you ask them nicely. Let's begin by reviewing a few of the file locations and tools you'll need even before launching the Arma 3 client. For quick access, I have shortcuts set up in Windows Explorer for most of these file locations. They're under the Favorites category in the left column. Error logs are plain text files generated by the client or server. Their file names end in .rpt, just like a normal text file ends in .txt. A new file is generated each time you run the client, and it saves all errors encountered during that session. The in-game editor saves unpacked mission files in their own individual folders here. If you want to examine how missions made by other mission makers work, there are a couple of locations you can check. The first is where the client downloads the packed mission files. Much like a .zip file, all of the mission files and their subdirectories are packed together into a .pbo file. In the next section, I'll show you how to get the program you need to pack and unpack the PBOs. The other place to look for other people's missions is where Steam Workshop missions are downloaded. You will have to look through multiple number-named folders to pinpoint their exact location. Moving on, you will need a few tools and resources to make missions properly. Get the links to them in the video description below. Number 1. Notepad++. This is for editing your scripts, or when editing things inside the editor is too cumbersome. Number 2. PBO Manager. This is for packing and unpacking missions, much like a zip file. This program adds right-click functionality inside of Windows Explorer for easy packing and unpacking. Number 3. Arma 3 Tools in Steam. Hover over the Library button, click on Tools, and install Arma 3 Tools from that list. There's many good tools inside this suite, not directly related to making missions. But for mission making, you're most concerned with Image to PAA. As you might have already guessed, its function is to convert regular image files into the .paa format. Images read by missions must be in that format. It must also have dimensions in one of the two squared numbers. For example, 256 by 512 pixels, or 1024 by 128 pixels. Personally, I use another program called TextView 2 for the conversion. It has more capabilities, but both programs get the job done just fine. Number 4. Audacity. And this is to edit and save sound files into the .ogg format. If you do use custom sounds in your mission, you should use compression to keep the total mission file size down. If you're hunting around for sound files to use in your mission, I recommend sounddogs.com for finding good sounds. Number 5. Tofi's Arma Dedicated Server Tool. This will let you configure and launch a dedicated server with ease. You'll need a dedicated server ready for testing your mission in identical conditions to the actual A3G server. Number 6. Yata's Arma 3 Objects Library. Here you can see pictures of all the vanilla objects you can use, and easily copy their respective class names. There are many more objects in our content pack, as well as new objects released by Bohemia in the latest game updates. And last but not least, number 7. Killzone Kids scripting tutorials are essential reading for those who want to enter into the mysteries of SQF programming. Okay, one last thing before we launch the client and start up the editor. You will want to add one parameter to the program shortcut. It is -show script errors. See the video description for copy and pastable target lines. Script errors appear temporarily in-game as white text inside a black box. They specify where exactly you screwed up inside any script and how. You can see here that it tells you which file, what type of error, what line, and exactly where in that line. It points out the exact place of the error with the pipe #pipe signs. I should point out that it only shows the very last error produced, which may have been caused by the error that happened before the one you're seeing. Always rely on the RPT error log files, because these errors you see in-game are always recorded there. We're going to use my mission, Halloween, on Chernaroos as an example to study mission making. It has a healthy mix of editor-placed elements and scripted gimmicks, so you'll learn both ends of the spectrum. If you want to view this mission inside the editor, download the PBO file from the link in the video description. Right-click on it and unpack it with the third bottom option into its own folder. Drag that folder into the missions folder I showed you earlier in the video. It's that folder where the editor saves to. I encourage you to deconstruct other missions you enjoy playing to learn what exactly made them so good. Okay, here's the Halloween mission inside the editor. There's quite a lot going on here. We'll break it down later by the elements you see represented along the left column. First, let's find out what all these icons mean. There's only one icon along the top row I want to tell you about. The rest are self-explanatory or irrelevant for our purposes. Go to the icon along the top row that looks like a sun and clouds. It's called Intel. Here you can set the mission name, description, starting time, date, starting weather, forecasted weather, and the kind of relationship the independent faction has with Blue4 and Op4. Let's switch over to the column of icons on the left edge of the screen. The first icon on the left column is for singular units. With this icon selected, double-click somewhere on the map to create a new unit. You'll have to choose a faction, class, and so on. To make playable units for your mission, change the setting under Control to Playable. To preview the mission in the editor as this unit, change it to Player. Once there is a player unit introduced for the mission, you will be able to create units under the Empty faction. This is for creating game objects like chairs, tables, base structures, or empty vehicles like tanks, trucks, or quad bikes. If you're setting up a base with vehicles for players at the beginning of the mission, you do not want to create vehicles as a regular faction because they will be fully crewed with AI belonging to that faction. On the right side of the unit window, the description text box lets you define how that unit will be described in the multiplayer role slotting screen. We'll cover the boxes above description on the right side when we learn about scripting later on in the video. The next icon represents groups. With this selected, you can double-click on the map and make multiple units that are linked together with blue lines. The group leader issues orders to the whole group. If that group leader dies, the next highest ranking unit becomes the new leader of the group. You can organize groups however you want by clicking on a unit, holding it down, and unclicking on the leader unit. The third icon represents triggers. This is a way for the mission to check a defined area on the map for certain conditions and to make things happen once those conditions are met. Conditions are checked about twice a second. Look at the left side. A countdown waits the amount of time specified after the condition is met and makes the event happen regardless if the unit that triggered it is still inside the defined area. A timeout, however, defines the amount of time that the conditions must continually be met in order for the event to happen. In the condition box on the right, the word "this" refers to conditions defined above that box, and you can also add more conditions with scripted language. The on-act or on-activated box allows you to add scripts to run when the trigger is activated. The on-DEA or on-deactivated box allows you to add scripts to run when the trigger is deactivated. For example, when a unit leaves the defined trigger area. The next icon looks like a pair of feet. This represents waypoints. Waypoints are used to define the route and behavior of units. With the unit icon selected, click once on a group leader unit to highlight it. Then, change over to the Waypoints tool, the pair of feet. Double-click somewhere to create a waypoint for that group. The various settings you can pick on the right are mostly self-explanatory. After you've hit OK, double-click somewhere else to create the next waypoint. A line with an arrow will connect those waypoints. If you set waypoints along roads for ground vehicles, the AI will follow roads fairly accurately. Moving on, synchronization is represented by the interlocking chains icon. This useful tool can be used to control AI behavior across multiple groups. For example, syncing can be used to organize forces to wait until everyone is in position before launching an attack, or waiting in ambush until the enemy is in the perfect location before opening fire. Just like setting up groups, click and drag from one element to another to sync them. It creates dark blue lines between elements. In this example, I've set up this AI group to wait at the synced waypoint until the synced trigger has been activated. They'll continue on to the next waypoint when the trigger has been activated. You can also sync one group's waypoint to another group's waypoints. The group that reaches a synced waypoint will wait there until all the elements it's been synced with have been activated or completed. The icon with an X over a circle represents markers. In order to view any markers already created in the mission, you need to have this tool already selected. Markers can be singular points or shapes with borders. Marker names are optional. You can also create invisible markers as reference points for scripting purposes or just to create simple text on the map. Good missions usually list friendly assets available and designated radio frequencies somewhere on the map, so it can be referenced during the briefing and mission. Modules are represented by the icon that looks like several stacked cubes. These are basically packages of scripts ready to be plopped down into your mission. Some modules cause things to happen wherever the module is placed. For example, in my mission, I've used some smoke modules in the effects category to create spooky areas of smoke rising out of the ground. Other modules can be placed anywhere on the map. Some modules require you to synchronize them together to function properly. Syncing is especially important for the Alive modules. Also of importance for A3G missions is the AGM medical module. You must set up the medical settings for your mission inside of this module. Let's see how all of these types of elements are combined to make Halloween work. We have playable Blue 4 units spawning together on this hill around a campfire, which has been given the variable name campfire so it can be referenced later with scripts. Even though I set up the AGM medical module to allow any player to use epinephrine to revive other players, I made doubly sure they could by placing this line of code inside each playable unit's init field. The word "this" refers to the unit you're working on. There are various objects belonging to the empty side, which has the color yellow. I've also placed various crates that automatically come filled with medical supplies for AGM. You can create crates to fill up with whatever you want with simple scripts. See the video description for this sample script to put in the crates init field. Remember, if you want to give your players vehicles to start with, enter them on the yellow empty side. Nearby, I've set down a few modules and a unit on the game logic side. The logic unit is there just to run a script, the lights.sqf file, which disables the nighttime city lights in street lamps so there's total darkness. I wanted this to make the mission more scary. Another module is to require every player to be running CBA, an essential mod for extended scripting. The last two here are for AGM. One spits out error messages when players are running the wrong version of AGM, and the other is AGM medical settings. A little bit southeast of the friendly camp is a long, skinny trigger area. This activates when any Blue 4 unit enters it. There's a script in the OnAct field, which calls the spawn daemon script on the designated invisible marker. We'll take a look at that script later. There are two more triggers just like this one further south. The players continue the mission by going more south along a path of flaming barrels not visible in the editor because they're created by a script. I'll explain why I did that later. There's various enemy groups walking in loops via the cycle waypoint. There are lots of spooky skeletons, hanging corpses, and mass graves along the way. The players eventually end up at Green Mountain. If they've survived this far, there's a couple of triggers that handle ending the mission. The first checks to see that no op4 are present inside the trigger area. When activated, it creates a new variable called op4 gone and sets it to true. The next trigger is bigger in area and requires both a blue 4 unit to be inside the area and for the variable op4 gone to be true. When activated, it calls the ending script to start. Okay, that's the editor. Now we're ready to take a look at scripting.